two of those leaders, I mean, absolute top of the list here with us today. Marlo, you've been in office now.
Not quite 18 months.
Not quite 18 months, and you have already racked up win after win after win in the pushback against ESG. I'd love to just start off asking you, when you came into office, what was it about, you're obviously the state's highest fiduciary officer, and you see, the state as that your responsibility in defending the state's economy is important. What was it about ESG that was so, oh my gosh, we got to do something about this right away?
So it was really when the Department of Labor last November came out with a proposed rule to allow an ESG fund as a default option in pension systems. That, to me, signaled the politicization of our retirement assets, the politicization of the capital markets. And that's when I got extremely concerned and really started to do a deep dive. Because we have had a very strong fiduciary standard in this country that puts the beneficiaries at the top of any decision that is made by a plan sponsor or by a fiduciary. And if you allow ESG as a default option, that changes that dynamic completely, where a plan sponsor or whoever is providing a benefit plan can then use their political agenda to drive it, and suddenly you've completely changed our system.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's been interesting about this, during the Trump administration, I believe each agency had a faith liaison assigned to it, so that any agency in the country, there was somebody that the religious community could go to express their issues, because so many regulations touch on that. Well, the Biden administration has replaced the Trump faith liaison with the Democrat faith liaison, which is a climate czar at every one of these agencies. And so, because that's their religion. And we have seen now the fruits of that, and you and I know have talked about that a lot. Speak a little bit about sort of how you've seen that, the level of, where you've got like the OCC and the MSRB, pushing out agencies that, I'm almost expecting the, Bureau of Printing and Engraving to put out, start, pushing out climate policy.
Yes.
Speak a little bit about that, how your office has pushed back on that.
So when I heard about the Department of Labor, that was really through the Attorney General's office, and I said, we have got to do something, because we did see the Office of Comptroller and Currency, the nominee for the head of that was a devout Marxist. I call it a regulatory iron curtain that we are seeing come down across this country, a whole of government approach that is pushing an agenda that is incredibly dangerous. It really is the weaponization of the federal government against the citizenry. I never thought I would see it in this country, because every regulatory agency that has any ability to push this agenda is being called upon to do that. And we have got to push back. And so we started writing letters, getting other states to join in on those letters, to lay the groundwork really for litigation if needed. And so with the Department of Labor coming out last week and allowing ESG as a default option in pension plans, hopefully we'll see some litigation around that. So it's really been an effort to bring states together collectively to push back through the letter process, the comment process with agencies with their rulemaking, and thank heavens for West Virginia versus EPA. That's a model that I think is ultimately going to have to be replicated against the SEC and some of these other regulatory bodies to put them back in place.
Absolutely. Well, both Treasurer Oaks and CFO Petronas are members of an organization called the State Financial Officers Foundation. And the head of it always likes to say, if you've met one treasurer's office, you've met one treasurer's office, because they all differ in the powers and their authorities and what they oversee. And CFO Petronas, your office holds a very unique position. I don't think any other state is situated quite like the way your office is, in that you are one of only 3 trustee members to Florida's sizable state pension fund. And so that has positioned you very uniquely to push back on some of this politicization. I'd love to hear, how you see the problem and the many ways in which you, in conjunction with your other two trustee members, which is the governor and the attorney general, have been pushing back.
So we've got $200 billion under asset management. But, I got to first address something. Jonathan wants to brag about Utah being number one in rich state, poor states. Let me tell you something. Utah will fit inside of Miami-Dade County, okay? All right? There's 22 million people in Florida, and we're number 8, okay? So
don't come to Utah.
So I got to brag about my Florida legislature. Danny Perez is going to be the incoming national chair. I'm so proud of his leadership and what he's doing. Danny, thank you for what you're stepping up. And all of you being here today, look, I loved my time at ALEC. There is such an incredible opportunity. I hope you're sitting with other people at your table other than legislators from your state, because shame on you if you're not, because there's so much a great opportunity to cross-reference policies between your states. But in saying that, getting back to your original question, Florida is unique. $200 billion under asset management. We're funded at 87%. But, the legislature knows the importance of having a good credit rating. So we're AAA bond rating. This is 4 years in a row by all 3 major rating agencies. But, they will backfill our unfunded liabilities when they need to, in addition to balancing the budget. But, a few months ago, the governor, we had a SBA meeting, and we decided to start pulling back and send shots across the bows across the woke fund managers, and starting to say, we want to start voting our proxies. We want to start sending a message loud and clear. And even under my own treasury, I got $60 billion just in our checkbook under management, and it's got to be parked somewhere. We do a great job. We are able to make incredible returns on those investments as we're doing the legislature's bidding and writing those warrants. But we're going to start prioritizing, and I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see some changes here in the next 24 hours where we're going to start to make our own decisions known out of our own office, in addition to the leadership changes that Governor DeSantis has instituted.
Wow.
I know y'all want Governor DeSantis, but you're not getting him. He's staying in Florida right now. So.
Well, he's doing a fantastic job, and you as well in pushing back against this. What have been let me ask you again, CFO, what have been the biggest challenges? Obviously, there is a conjunction between a government interest in terms of the Democratic Party, the progressive left, but also they have allies in corporate America, mainly because they've replaced people with their allies through woke capitalism. But what are the greatest challenges that you foresee as CFO of Florida in sort of pushing back on this? I know that sometimes there's issues with moving to there's only so many asset managers out there, there's only so many banks. And they've used that to their advantage to sort of force. You'd think, who could push around a state? And I'm not saying either your states are getting pushed around, but they are clearly trying to do that. If you can't come to us, who are you going to come to? What are some of the biggest challenges you guys foresee in this fight?
I think one of the comments that was made earlier regarding quoting Ronald Reagan, look, Tallahassee is fantasy land. Everybody that interfaces with the Florida legislature or the Capitol, they laugh at your jokes. They always tell you how good looking you are. They ask about your wife by a first name basis. There is such an incredible appetite to make you as happy and comfortable with whoever is going to be positioning you on an issue. And sometimes you just got to, hey, I love you as a friendship, but your issue sucks. And you've got to be able to have that courage. I feel a little liberated. We just got done with a great election cycle in Florida. And, I've got 4 years of runway where we're going to start challenging the status quo. And you got to have the courage to do it. I know y'all do. It's envious. But when you make the actions that you're making in Utah, it inspires other states to want to get engaged. It's just having the courage. And if they want to come back and say, well, this is a federal issue, no, I call baloney on it. What is Florida chopped liver? California wants to go embrace data privacy. And I applaud the other states that have embraced some type of data privacy policy and legislation. But we all need to go out and be a little more aggressive with it and demand transparency and not take the standard line, this is a federal issue.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic point, CFO. So much of this ESG structure is built upon large blue states or coalition of blue states like California, Washington, Oregon, basically telling participants in the market that if they want to do business with those states, they are going to have to undermine the interests of states like Florida and Utah. I would love to hear from you, Treasurer Oaks. I know that you have worked in terms of almost states getting ESG ratings and in terms of the MSRB. Could you speak a little bit to how this kind of seems like a little bit of a, I hate to use, I don't use the, civil war, that's a little too out there, but there does seem to be an aggression coming from states like California, where they are pushing for policies that are explicitly undermining the economies of states like Utah and Florida, especially in terms of debt issuance and the ways in which your credit ratings, Utah has a AAA credit rating, I think forever. You've never not had one. Right. And yet there was a move towards undermining your credit rating based on these ESG standards. Could you talk a little bit about how that's coming about and then some of the ways you're pushing back?
Yeah, no, I've spoken for months about Utah having the best credit in the world because we're rated AAA. The federal government can't say that. We've never been downgraded from AAA since 1965 when S&P Global first started rating the state of Utah. But that may not matter if we have a separate ESG rating, and it can be separate, and it is separate for a reason, because then I can point to that rating as a market participant and say, well, yeah, Utah has the best credit in the world. They have AAA rating, but look at the policy. Look at their ESG rating. So one example of how political this is the S part. It's actually under G, adverse publicity resulting in reputational risk. And the end of August, there was a volleyball game at Brigham Young University, a women's volleyball game. And one of the spectators was accused of hurling racial epithets at another player. And what happened? Well, suddenly the state of Utah, the entire state of Utah, was a bunch of racists. And if we had been borrowing money in the capital markets, there is a very serious chance, if ESG were grasped onto in this country more wholly, that Utah would have been punished through the borrowing costs in the capital markets because of adverse publicity resulting in reputational risk. Not that it was true, and it has never been proven to be true that those actions actually happened, but the damage was done. Utah was a racist state. That is what we are talking about, the politicization of capital, and why I am very concerned about this movement to create a political score on states and even counties and other municipalities to force your behavior as legislators to drive the policy in your state, and they use it using money as a lever. We have got to push back, or we will lose the country. We are losing the sovereignty of the states. It is that serious. And I don't believe that it is too bold to say that this is the biggest threat that we face as a country since the Civil War.
Wow. Well, that was a very strong and powerful statement, Treasurer. That is incredible. And I'm glad you brought up the S and the G, because a lot gets made of the E, which is, for all intents and purposes, really just a net zero target. Ironically, right. In some ways, the E actually covers up for other environmental concerns that get swept under the rug, like lithium and cobalt mining and those kind of issues with China as well. CFO Petronis, your state has famously been involved in some issues related, would be categorized under the S and the G. I'd love for you to give you an opportunity to follow on to Treasurer Oaks' comments as well, because I know this is a state, Florida is a state that the powers that be would love to punish for standing Absolutely. Up to the wokesters. How do you see the S and the G, affecting Florida?
I spent 30 years of my life in the restaurant business, and it's incredibly competitive. Service industry employees, a lot of them, they work from month to month or every other month to every other month. And I look at what's happened over the last last 2 years. And when you look at the inflation price index, it doesn't include fuel. It doesn't include food. And here, these are the two biggest impacts on, I think, is really a hidden tax on every citizen in the state of Florida. Their cost of living has gone up exponentially. It's affected the ability of businesses in order to succeed, employ people, to make their numbers work. And I applaud when you've got a strong governor. Governor DeSantis has been incredibly strong. It makes it easy for us to get excited about pushing, about leading. It gives the legislature courage to stand up and knowing that if they want to dream big, bold ideas, that if they send it to the governor's desk, the governor's going to sign it because he's out there taking those positions. So he picked a fight with Disney. It's been interesting to see how that's unfolded. Disney has been on probation in a lot of ways over the last year, and there's a lot of bated breath as we've seen a shakeup. Bob Iger's coming back, and is this going to be a narrative of where they're going to use the removal of Chapek in order to try to appease the governor, appease the legislature, saying, look, we don't want to be in part of what happened in the past. We just want to just hold our head down and make a living. But I think when the governor decided to take on somebody as to the scale of Disney, this sent shockwaves. I mean, it's like picking a fight with Mother Teresa, but it's not easy. The legislature has to step up and have the guts to pass that legislation too. We're going to pick a fight with IRS. I see Toby's over here. Hey, Toby, thanks for being here. Toby's going to carry legislation, as every state should. Don't take the IRS expansion sitting down. People can look at this massive expansion in the IRS as well. This is federal. What do we do about it? There's a lot of things you can do about it. We're going to think outside of the box, and we're going to continue to push, and if nothing else, to continue to hold pressure on Congress. So whether it be what we're going to pick fights with woke corporations, whether we're going to pick fights with woke expansion of the IRS, it's up to us, and shame on you if you don't do something about it in your own legislative bodies. You put your names on the ballot. Do something about it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. One thing I would love to laud both of you for right now. I know politics, even when we're in the same party, can sometimes be a contact sport. Mm-hmm. I think both of you exemplify people, elected representatives, who are willing to work with the other statewide officials in your state. I think that's part of the reason you've been so effective. Your comments about working with Governor DeSantis, he's only able to do that because he doesn't have someone trying to stab him in the back at the state level, if playing the other side. And so I think the actions of your office and the other statewide officials that have backed him in that fight has really been a big part of why he's been able to take it to Disney. And for those who haven't seen the news, Christopher Rufo got a hold of a private town hall that incoming CEO Bob Iger had yesterday. And let's just say he's walking back a number of the things that they have done in the past. I think you can all but declare victory on that one. Yeah. So I think, yeah, exactly. And then Treasurer Oaks, your work with Attorney General Reyes, the partnership that you guys have clearly formed in pushing back at the federal, we talked a little bit about in terms of regulatory comments, I think is to be highly lauded. And I think I would just add in my own editorializing here that for those in the room who are concerned about ESG, it is very important that we hang together, or we will certainly hang separately when it comes to pushing back against this, because there are forces that are trying to peel off anyone they can to get a foot in the door on this stuff. Well, I know that we're running a tiny bit behind this morning, and I was asked to keep it to 20 minutes, so we're gonna close it out here. I want to remind everybody that for those interested in the ESG issue, we have a panel right after this, I think at 9:15, on the ESG and what states can do. We're going to be really getting into the nitty-gritty of how to push back. But please join me in thanking our two guests this morning, and we'll see you soon.
Please welcome back to the stage, Karen Fan.
everybody take notes on that one? You know, some of the best things about, absolutely, some of the best things about when you come to these ALEC meetings, as you heard last night, as you heard yesterday, our members, not only our members in the legislature, as well as all the lobbyists and the support groups that we have, but as well as the speakers that we have from other states, you can tell how passionate they are about the problems and the issues and all the great things that we do in America. And that's why this organization is so important, because it gives us that opportunity to not only share that information, but to also voice those concerns and find good solutions to solving those problems. I am so glad that these sessions are being recorded, because I will certainly myself be revisiting some of them and being able to go back and take those notes that I wasn't able to do this morning. I would like to say a special thank you to you and the rest of the Consumers Research for everything that you do to further the work here at ALEC. Without your organization, partners, and sponsors like you, we would be unable to continue to pursue the limited government, free markets, and federalism in our states. So thank you once more. If like me, you'd like to hear this message again, don't forget to visit ALEC YouTube channel for more content, both from this meeting and from past meetings. This morning we have several workshops taking place. I encourage you to please take part in one or all of them. Following today's breakfast, there will be 3 workshops. The first one is How States Fight Back Against ESG. I don't know about you guys, but when we were in Atlanta, that particular one was not only sold out, they just kept coming and coming. We ended up having to turn people away. So if you plan on attending that one, I would say get there early to get a seat, because it was a very, very popular seminar. The second one is Preparing Your State to Fight Inflation, 2 Article 5 conventions, and our very own Tech Talk. You also won't want to miss today's Task Force Town Hall. Hear firsthand how ALEC Task Force directors on the issues that are popping up in your state. I hope everyone will stop by and hear what we can do for you, and sessions will be held on the constitutional level 3B. I would like to also add, don't forget all of our great exhibitors and their booths there. I always learn so much from the folks that show up here that not only support ALEC, but want us to understand what their groups are about. So I encourage you all to please stop by and visit all the booths out there, exhibit booths. Okay, we will see you again this afternoon for the plenary lunch session, who is featuring, ready for it, Speaker Newt Gingrich and Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. So we will see you at lunch. Thank you.